Good morning. How are you guys doing? I just spilled water down the front of me, taking that last drink right before. So I'm good. I hope you guys are well. I am doing something kind of easy today to sew because things are kind of busy around here, and I thought that would be a good thing to do. So let me know if you can hear me okay, because I keep reconfiguring my setup here because I record other videos and I need the cameras on other machines and things, and I just want to make sure you can hear me okay and see me okay, and let me know if I need to adjust the brightness or the angle on anything. So I'm making the Tunic number 1 by 100 Acts of Sewing, otherwise known as Sonia Phillip. I adore her community and what she's done for home sewing and her handmade wardrobe chronicles. I totally suggest you follow her on Instagram. She has 2 accounts, and check out, all the makes that people share of her really simple patterns. They're great wardrobe staples, and I feel like maybe I'll be one of the cool kids now that I have one of her pieces. So it's a really simple pattern packaging, and I really love that. Like, it just makes it feel like she really wanted to get this out in the world, and I actually really love that kind of sentiment. So I picked a lightweight cotton that I just saw at the fabric store. Wasn't what I really planned to make with this, and not what I planned for this. But it's one of those things where you see the fabric at the store and you're like, I have to make that right now into something, because this is like, it's got all the great vibes of color for this time of year, and I'm pretty excited about it. And yes, is it okay if I use this trim again? I know I just used them on the Burnside bibs, but it just goes so well. I really love it. And I didn't get to use this for what it was for, so. And I lost one of the Burnside bibs videos. That power surge, there was something going on in my neighborhood, so I will probably do another sew through of that. They turned out amazing. Like, I love them. I want to live in them. I wore them yesterday. I should have wore them today, but I really couldn't wait another day. The mods I did actually turned out pretty good, and I think I might even make a pattern piece for that side button closure. That's a free download, because I think other people might want to do that. But what's really funny is the denim is stretchy enough that I actually don't need to unbutton them, and I'm pretty wide hip, so I was pretty surprised. I don't really recommend that. It's going to stress those buttons and buttonholes, but in a pinch, it's easy to get on and off, is more than I thought. So I'm really glad I shortened those ties. The seam for the tie did end up right where my knot is, but it's not a problem. And putting the elastic on the back, I love that. I will definitely do that again. So I will hopefully be able to post pictures. I don't have any good pictures, unfortunately, because that's one thing. That's the hardest thing for me to do, is to get good pictures when you're by yourself. And my friend visited yesterday, and I was going to have her take pictures, and then I chickened out. I don't know why. And I totally forgot. I would have done it. I just totally forgot. It would have been a lot easier. My family's out of town. They can't take pictures. So soon, I promise, I'll post pictures. I'm going to be wearing them. Maybe I'll wear them Saturday. How's that? So my only disappointment right now is that the denim keeps bleeding a little bit, and it's interesting because the denim I bought for my actual ginger jeans, same thing. I washed that, I dried it. It wasn't all the way dry. I pulled out the clothes that was with the fabric, and then I thought, I'll throw it in the washer. Or no, I'll just keep drying it with the next load, and everything in that load turned a little bit blue. So unfortunately, I think I lost a pair of cream pants in that. So, and then same with the black denim that I made the Burnside bibs out of. I didn't notice that they were bleeding, but one of the ties I was tying in the bathroom, and then it fell into the sink and got wet. And so I just took the hand towel and dried off the end of the tie, and I have this stripe of blue, even though it's black denim, on my hand towel. So I'm like, eek! I don't know what to do. So I'm just hoping that doesn't keep happening. I'm sure it'll settle. They're both different brands of denim. I got them completely different places, completely different countries even. And one of them was even made in another country. So I think it's just, typical of denim that the dye kind of, isn't quite settled yet. So anyway, let's get to it. So I'm going to make my tunic out of this little, I want to call those hydrangea clusters with some I don't know, with some other flowers bits in there. And then I love this fabric. I know it doesn't quite go with it, but I think if I trim it with the blue, maybe I could make the pocket out of it. Maybe even put a little trim. Am I gilding the lily here? I just want to use it. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm going to make my pocket and see if that's going to work. And then if it doesn't, I have a backup pocket here, and I'll still do the same thing. So we're gonna get to bind today. I know how much you love binding. So let's see, I got all my pattern pieces. It's a very simple thing. You can cut this out in a jiff. It's just 2 sleeves, a front and a back, and the pocket, and that's it. So first off, actually, I may have to skip this unless I may have to change my thread color if I want to keep it. Better yet, let me think here. Yeah, I'm going to change my thread because I kind of want this trim. I already changed my thread once, but hey, you know, I won't have to change the bobbin. That'll work. Now all I got to do on my machine is tie it and pull it through, just like a serger. So, but you do have to watch me thread a needle, and that can be a little bit painful sometimes. Let's see how I do. First try. All right, so I'm going to attach a little bit of this where I think that the hem will be. So best case scenario, you're going to press this first. I'm going to just finger press it again, and I'm going to use some pins. I always pin perpendicular so that I can sew right over it, especially since these pins are going to be on the back side of the pocket while I'm doing it, just like that. And I'm going to set this right on top there. And I'm going to aim for my hem, just like that. So what are you guys sewing? People have been sewing more and more. The seasons are changing. I'm still in the mood to sew, you know, our dresses though. So kind of a bummer. Yeah, my bobbin's a different color. I'm not going to worry about it. That's mainly because of the bias that I'm going to sew on there. So around here, I'm getting ready to launch my fall fabrics for my day job, which is chicken boots, and that's why I picked a simpler project today. Give myself permission to do something a little simpler. I totally even forgot about the stream today. That's how kind of my head is in the, you know, into that other project. So I always start from the back. Oh, let's change my thread color back actually. Do that really quick. I uploaded a new video yesterday on making the South Bank sweater. Super cozy. It's part of my Needle Sharp subscription box. It took me a half hour to sew it, and I'm not like speed sewing. I did the whole thing on my serger. So if you need a quick sew and you have a serger, I totally recommend it, especially if you need something that's a whole outfit, maybe something a little warmer. You could pair it with tights, boots. It's really cute. I ended up, after sewing it, changing it to a sweatshirt because I couldn't get the pockets to lay like flat. My pictures are definitely showing it in the most flattering light as far as the pockets go, but the fit is really good. And that fabric that came with my Needle Sharp box is a 2-way stretch, and it probably would have been a little better as a 4-way stretch. All right, so I'm going to attach this binding here. And I'm going to start from the back and go to the front, and I'm going to wrap the top just like that. That way I have less to finish when I get to it. Now, this is one of the tricks we're going to do on the neckline is I'm going to slightly pull my bias as I'm putting it on. That way it's going to want to naturally curve to the front and curve under. And people think I'm doing some sort of special trick when I sew bias, that I used a special foot or did something that I'm not revealing, but it really is, this first step is key in setting up your bias binding properly. And this is a great practice spot before you get to your neckline. Even though the neckline is, the curve is the other direction, it's still going to be good practice because we're going to slightly pull as we put it on there, not the pocket, just the bias. And I didn't see what width that she says to cut your bias at. I cut mine for this at 1/4 of an inch, 1 1/4 inch. And it's just because it's a width I'm really comfortable with. Everything here at Chicken Boots we cut at 1 3/8 inch. And then it finishes at about 3/8 of an inch wide, like a little bit under, sometimes a little bit over. So I'm just picking up my presser foot as I go around the corner. I'm just going to do this the slowest way possible. Just like that. And you see how that's already pulling up? That's good. That's what we want. This is kind of like when we put the sleeve into an armhole and we want that cap to fit in there and there's all the extra fabric we're trying to ease into the armhole. Well, that's kind of the same idea, except we don't have to fit this anywhere. So when I get here to the end, I'm going to wrap it around again, just like that. And the reason I do that is now I have this nice finished edge right there. I don't have to do anything about that. So I'm just going to look at my curve here and trim any of it that's a little bit outside of the seam allowance I want to use, or the width of the binding I want to finish, because that is also part of my secret, which is not a secret, is that I cut the seam allowance to be the width of the binding that I want it to finish. And this is when the binding is on the edge of something, not onto the inside of something. So this, in other words, my binding is going to show on the edge like this. Rather than if, say this was the right side, sometimes you can bias face you know, an object like that and then it looks like that, right? That's the difference. So we're actually going to turn it to the right side. I'm going to turn down 1/4, turn that down, the seam allowance down, then turn it under. Here's my other secret weapon that's not a secret, and it's my awl, because I like to hold it in place with my awl, just like that. This fabric, the chambray that I'm using, is what I made my the Aster shirt the other day out of. It's very open weave. It's a little bit finicky as binding. And it also would probably unravel quite a bit if it wasn't cut on the bias, but bias is kind of a magical grain line in that things stop unraveling and they become stretchy. Okay, so I'm just turning it under and stitching it down. And the reason I go from the back to the front is because nobody's going to see the back side once I attach my pocket to my outfit. So why make that the last step? I'm going to make the step that's going to show so I have complete control over how it's going to look. And so I'm just turning under that edge, meeting it to the seam line, and it kind of wants to do that. Here's my other tip. I had to learn all this myself, you guys. I literally really wanted binding in my line, and I love the look of it, but I've never been a quilter, so I didn't have any background in it. I didn't hang out with anybody doing that. That was, you know, that I could learn from. But here's my other tip. When you, let me get around this curve here and get to a straight spot. I feel like one of the things people have the biggest trouble with is their stitching showing in the wrong place. And so this is my trick. I can see right where I sewed my first pass when I attached the bias to this piece, right? So I know if my needle for this pass now, this next stitch, is to the right of it, that it's going to be inside the seam allowance here. If it's on the outside of it, it's going to show on the fabric, right? Because it's to the left of the seam. So if you stay to the right of the seam or just on top of it or barely to the right of it or left of it, you're going to fall within that seam allowance and it'll look like you stitched it all in one if you're really careful. And obviously, you know, like I am not sewing couture or perfectionist sewing right now. I'm entertaining you guys and trying to empower everybody to do all the things they really want to do and not be intimidated by any of it. Because I feel like if you really want that detail on your garment, you should try it. Chances are you're really going to want to figure it out, so why not? So that's what I mean. So see there? Because I stitched to the left, I'm sorry, to the right of the seam line, my stitching fell on top of the binding here. So look at that. Looks pretty good. That's actually some of the better binding I've done, especially with this weird fabric. The other thing that's helping is the fact that I stretched my binding as I put it on. I'm just trimming this thread, that's all. I'll trim this one while I'm at it. My hands are a little shaky, sorry. I got a little thrown off this morning because I forgot my laptop at home and I was like, oh, darn it. That's how I watched the chat, and I was like, I almost ran home. I had to do that the other day because I forgot it at home the other day. And I was like, yeah, I'll figure it out. So now I'm a little like, eh. Okay, so we're almost to the beginning. I did my little tricky corner tucking, and I'm using my awl to tuck in all these little extra pieces like that right there. I'm going to tuck that in there because it wants to unravel, and then I'm going to cover it up. So I use my awl to kind of pick it up and put it right on top there, just like that. So that's my little pocket. Okay, so what do you guys think? Do you think it's going to look good on here? What do you think? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the white's too white. I think I'm going to leave it. I think I kind of like it. It's cute. And when I stitch this down, it'll make that behave too. So, all right. I can always take off my pocket and put on the other one when it's done if I don't like it, right? All right. So this pattern isn't geared towards doing French seams because there's no armhole distinction on the pattern. So you can't use French seams. You're going to have to use a serger to finish your seams or a zigzag stitch or pinking shears. But on the shoulder, I am going to use a French seam. Mainly, and I'll tell you why, and this is because when I go to do the neckline binding, I'm going to put the binding, well, if you were going to put the binding to the outside of the garment, that means part of your shoulder seam might peek out the neckline seam, and you don't want that. So I'm just going to show you an option to finish that neckline right at the shoulder seam. And what I mean by that is, so once you have your shoulder seam finished like this, if your bias comes to the front, your seam allowance comes to the front, and you will see the edge of your seam allowance right there if you're not getting it spot on. That way, if you do a French seam, it's going to clean finish that, and then you won't have that issue. All right, so wrong sides together. The pattern pieces are not, I don't have it wrong sides together, there we go, are only one. So the front and the back is one pattern piece. And then you trim the neckline to distinguish the front from the back. Oh, I need to switch my thread out. Lots of thread changing, but now we're done. You guys didn't remind me. Okay. I keep finding this little green fuzzy thing. I don't know what it's from. So I'm all caught up on my Needle Sharp subscription box now. And I'm looking forward to the next one because it is a what I call a day dress or a shirt dress. So that's definitely a favorite silhouette of mine. I really like feminine silhouettes just because I have a curvy body and they suit my physique a little better. All right, so we're doing our French seam on the shoulder only. I'm going to sew my first one at 1/4 inch because it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I've already serged my side seam, and so let me show you what I mean by that, the fact that there's no armhole distinction. So usually you'd have your armhole and it would come like this. And that's why you can't French seam this. It would be really hard to make this curve when you have this corner when you have your sleeve set in there. Hi, Melody. Do you like the pocket? Is that what you mean? I hope so. We'll see. I feel like if you're a knitter and a sewer, you notice really big distinctions with the advantages of either. In knitting, if you make a mistake, you can rip it out and use the yarn again. You know, I know that there's instances where your yarn is unusable, or maybe it was in a lot of little pieces, so you really can't use it. But for the most part, I've unknit whole sweaters and then used the yarn again. In sewing, you don't get as many do-overs. You know, there are times where you can salvage something if you're really creative, or, you know, if it went really badly. But sometimes it goes in the trash. I mean, like, I've had to throw whole things in the garbage, and it's painful. So, but on something like this, if I don't like that pocket, I'm going to be fine. I can replace it if I really don't. All right, so when you're doing your French seams, it's best to press the seam allowance open and then press it again along the seam edge here. And like I said, we can only do a French seam on the shoulder. And I'm going to show you why I'm doing it on the shoulder. I'm also going to trim all this right here. I really don't want that poking out of my my shoulder seam. And my serger thread is probably a little heavier than the serger thread that you use because of the stuff I use my serger, or the stuff we sew here is Tex 40. And we just use the same thread on our serger. So my serger thread tends to, that little tiny bit makes a big difference. It adds a little bulk, it's a little messier. Okay, so here's our French seams. It's pretty good. Okay, and so to sew the sleeve on, you match up the center notch. So there's no set-in sleeve here. It's a really easy way to put in a sleeve. Press your shoulder seam to the back. Let's get rid of this right now while we can. I have a little thread poking through there. Probably will get caught in the seam allowance of the sleeve. I can still, can you see my little notch? That's what I do is when it's on the fold, I just kind of go choop, and then I can see my little notch, especially if I've serged the edge. And so there's no start and stop notches for this. So you are going to match it up to the shoulder seam here. And then walk it, that's what a pattern term, you're going to walk your sleeve to the edge, and then you'll know where to start. And there's a little bit of a curve, so I'm going to walk it like this. Just like that. And now, I'm not going to pin it because I've got it. And let me see. I actually will go all the way to the edge. I'm pretty sure that works. In some cases that doesn't when you're doing a seam like this. So this kind of sleeve is based on a t-shirt block or a what's called a drop shoulder. It's more relaxed, lots easier to sew for the most part. The underarm is a little bit tricky in that it's not tricky to sew, but sometimes you might have a little issue when you turn the corner at your pivot point of your armhole to your side seam. Okay, same thing, push my shoulder seam to the back. Line up my center sleeve. I can barely see it, it's right there. Right there. Well, I should have attached my pocket when I had that thread on, huh? Okay. Let's see Now we're going to walk the sleeve to the beginning. And when you're walking something like this, you're walking it on the seam line, not at the edge. That's a different measurement. So you're going to walk it. I'm walking it kind of like this. This is the kind of the quick and dirty way pattern drafters check to see if their pattern is going to sew together. They walk the seams, and then they measure it, then they cut and sew a bunch, or someone else sews it. It's better to have someone else sew your patterns. It's easy to make something work when you've designed it. I always pin perpendicular so that I can do that. Like I can get up to it, I can sew through it, and then I can pull it out rather than point. I used to always pin pointing this way. I loved pinning that way. I still do sometimes by accident. But sometimes, you know, you can't let go of your work while you're sewing, and then the pin gets really close and you can get it jammed in there. And I've done that, and that's kind of when I was like, all right, I gotta stop this bad habit. But I like pinning that way because it's kind of holds it together in a way that is a little more secure. There's less room for wiggling, and you can try it on a little easier that way because it kind of fills in the gaps between the pins, whereas doing it this way, there's definite gaps. You have to pin more often. All right, so here's our underarm. So here's our sleeve to our bottom of our garment, and then we have the underarm here. This is the hem of the garment, and this is the sleeve hem, and then you just do the entire underarm seam just like this. And when you get here, you want to line up your seams, push them towards the sleeve, and see it's a little bit hard because you don't have that little right angle of your armhole that you usually do, which is also you know, helps fit in a different way as well. So I'm going to peel it back like this, line up my seam, pin that, because that I know I want that. And then all else can be modified to fit. Because see, look, my hems are cut a little bit off from each other, or maybe I sewed the sleeve in a little bit, you know, one direction towards the back or front. But the lining up of the underarm is more important to me. I didn't do any modifications to this pattern. I know I tend to modify things a lot, but boy, the possibilities on this are endless. Like I just want to make like 10 of them with different modifications, color blocking and yokes and pockets and things like that. So when I get here, I'm going to come just inside my seam where I sewed on the sleeve to the armhole, pivot at my point there just like that, and keep going. So this is what it looks like. So it's more obvious on this side. It probably means that my seam isn't perfectly matched up since I'm a little closer on this side, see? So let's see how it looks. I have pins here to mark my pocket. Oh, that's actually not too bad, huh? Pretty good. So I kind of want to top stitch this down. Like I feel like that look would look really nice, but I would have liked to have done it before I sewed the armhole so that the top stitching went into the seam allowance. I'm kind of debating right now whether I will reinforce this or clip that, because when you have this kind of armhole, see right here, this kind of wants to pull apart right here. I think I'm going to leave it and just see. I can always clip it later, and then I'll just reinforce it a little bit. That can be a stress point, and that's why. Typically, you see this sleeve style on a t-shirt, like something a little bit stretched, but not always. You definitely do see it on garments as well. And it's a nice relaxed look. It can be kind of comfortable. All right, let's do our other underarm. And all we have left after this is the neckline and the sleeve hems and the bottom hem. This is like the fastest, you know, thing we could sew practically. All right, so I'm going to peel it back just like this. I'm going to try and just making sure my seams are pressed. I did this so that there's no little like extra folding happening there, so I'm just kind of straightening it out, kind of making it taut. And now I'm going to peel it back like this, line it up, just like that. I start always at the bottom because my seam allowance is being pressed to my sleeve, and then I don't want to have to fight it, because if I were coming from the sleeve hem, I'd be fighting against that. And what happens is you might be able to pick up your presser foot and get over that little hump, but you have a danger of pushing it just enough that your seams won't match anymore. And so this way I'm reinforcing the direction that I want it to go. I think I bought some black and white gingham to make this in. You guys know I've wanted a black and white gingham dress for a really long time. I really need to get around to doing it. Now I'm like, I want it in everything. Now that I see it in my shop, I'm like, oh, that's a little like crazy for me. But I saw Sonia post a picture of herself wearing a modified Tunic No. 1 that she'd kind of made into a dress in a black and white gingham, and I was like, oh yeah, I have to do that. Like, I wanted it so bad. I'm gonna have to copy her. All right, I'm gonna reinforce this. And I'm just sewing right on the seam. It's not gonna do that much to reinforce, but it makes me feel a little better. I'm just gonna look at it. Pretty good. Okay. We're ready for that neckline? Okay, so really what we should have all done was stay stitch this neckline right off the bat, right after we sewed our shoulders. Now the shoulders don't match on this side, so I'm going to kind of blend this in. I didn't notice that before. It's funny because they lined up on the other end. So maybe when I cut it, it got a little off. So I'm going to stay stitch this, and I'm going to make sure I am not pulling the neckline at all when I do it, because this is going to help stabilize the neckline. The reason the neckline gets stretched out is because it's on a curve, and that curve right here, that's all in the bias. So this part right here is almost on the straight grain, because here's the grain line. But like and this is the grain line. Right here, that is the bias, and that's why it's getting stretched out. So I'm gonna make sure all my garment weight is up on my machine table like I always do, so it's not pulling on itself or the needle of the machine. And then I'm going to gently feed it through for the stay stitch. This is gonna push my shoulder seams to the back and keep them there, which is kind of nice. I won't have to worry about that later on. And I'm doing it at 1/4 inch seam allowance, because I'm going to sew my bias at 1/4 as well. I'm going to kind of stitch it right on this seam. When I do curves and circles like this, I do it from the inside of the garment. And honestly, I feel like this would have been the best step right after we did the shoulder seams, because your garment would have been open and laying flat. But I didn't want to do a bias step so quickly after the other one. Trim the thread. Well, you know, actually, yeah. I'm going to trim that thread right there. I just had a thought, like one of the things I thought about doing is you could pull the stay stitch thread just ever so slightly to kind of tighten it up. I'm not going to do that because we're going to pull the bias when we attach it. So there's our stay stitch. And when you do that stay stitch, it should still lay flat. It should still look good. It's quite a curve. All right, so I don't think my bias is going to be long enough for that whole thing, like one of these pieces. So maybe one of them would, but I don't want to run out in the middle. And so here's my little trick. When you have bias and you need to seam it together, you take both pieces pointing exactly the same, just like that. And you're gonna pick one up, put it right sides together. Oh my gosh, here we go, like that. It's hard to tell, so we'll pretend like that this is the right side and this is the right side because there's no print on this chambray. You put your corners pointing exactly the same way. It's totally contrary to logic in what it would seem like what you would do, because what people want to do is put the points together like this, and what happens is then you end up getting a piece of bias like this that looks like a picture frame. You don't want that, right? So you need to do the opposite of that, and that is point your corners just like this, pick it up, and put the cut edge together just like that. So when you sew it together, it should look like a picture frame, not afterward. And then you're gonna overlap it at the seam line where you plan on sewing it. So you're not going to line up these cut edges point to point. You're gonna line up the seam line point to point. I'm gonna do it at 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm gonna back tack and then back tack at the end. Okay, just like that. I'm gonna trim these threads right now because this chambray really wants to fall apart on me. And so now we have a nice continuous line. You see that? We can get rid of these points here and you can really see that continuous line then. Just like that. So that's the trick. It took me forever to figure that out. It makes the perfect sense to me now, but I remember just finally one day going, gosh darn it, I keep sewing this together wrong. I'm gonna figure this out and I'm gonna make sure it's logical to me, and that's what I did. I just sat there figuring it out and making something very visual for myself. So when you want to sew it when you want to sew it together, it needs to look like a picture frame, and then it'll be a nice smooth line once you're done. So hopefully that helps you guys. Now my starting spot, I'm going to square off. And if your bias doesn't have that angle, you can always seam it together straight, but when it's at an angle, it will lay flatter and smoother, and it'll be less conspicuous. And if you have a stripe, you're gonna have to be pretty diligent in making sure your stripes are going the same direction as each other. Just find the two pieces that'll line up and do that. Sometimes when I'm seaming a lot of bias together, because we don't get all of it made by outside, we sometimes hand cut it and make it here. I will make sure when I cut it at my table out there that I bring it in kind of in the same order so that I can just pick it up and keep sewing it together. Like I want it to be as fast as possible and painless as possible, because yuck, sewing bias. 30 yards of it together. I don't wish that on anybody. All right, I'm going to fold in this end here. I'm going to start from the the inside of the garment, not the back, but I am going to start at the shoulder seam. I'm going to turn the garment right side out. I'm really trying not to fiddle with my neck too much because I don't want it to get stretched out. I'm going to start on the back side. So here we go. So this is my back, this is my front, and it's right side out. I'm going to fold this edge here. I'm rethinking this. Actually, I want my bias to go to the inside. I don't want there to be a contrast edge. So we're going to do it the other way. I'm designing this as I go. I think it would look better with the bias trim on the inside. Okay, so I'm still going to do it from the inside of the garment as I'm sewing it. I'm going to do right sides together on the back. I'm going to line it up at the shoulder seam, just like this. And I'm going to fold that edge right up to it. And I'm going to slightly pull. Actually, I'm going to pull a little bit more than slightly as I attach it. See how much it's stretching? It's getting narrow. And with my left hand, I'm kind of pulling the garment to line up with the cut edges of the bias, because I'm not pinning it. It would be really hard to pin this because You can't pin this at a different rate as the other thing without it kind of being just really fussy to do. The other tip I want to give you is if you use a contrast bias on the inside of your garment anytime, make sure it's pre-washed, because the bias is going to shrink totally differently than your garment is because of the grain line it's on. And I have garments where I didn't do that. I thought about doing it at the last second, and I thought, oh, I really want a cute little bias facing hem here. I'm going to use a contrast bias, and I just pick one off the wall and I use it, and then it shrinks differently. And it looks nice on the inside, but on the outside of the garment, I get wrinkles, and it's because it's pulled at the garment. So make sure you just throw in your bias in the laundry when you're pre-washing your other fabric. Okay, yeah, you see all those ripples? I want that. Because when I stitch this down again, I'm gonna be stretching it out a little bit. The only thing I'm really concerned about right now is making sure that I encase my stay stitch edge. All right, so I just lay this right up to this edge and cut it. And now I'm gonna switch my thread color again. My favorite thing to do. So I finished my ginger shorts too, and figured out that pocket issue. Remember, I was like, what the heck did I do with these pockets? I misunderstood the instructions, the illustration on the instructions, and one of those pocket pieces was supposed to be folded as the pocket, and the other one was a facing that went over it. So it looks really classy when it's all sewn and everything, but mine did not turn out that way. I mean, they look fine. They look like that, but it's not this. If you pulled it apart, you would know that I didn't do it right. But I will definitely do my ginger jeans correctly. The shorts fit really good. I had to take out a 2 3/4 of an inch in the back waist because of my sway back. And I'll just note that on the pattern. And I also decreased the width of the waistband by like 3/4 of an inch because it was just too wide for me. All right, I'm gonna clip the curve. I'm gonna make sure, because remember, because I pulled this, the bias is pulling towards my seam like that. You see that? So I wanna make sure I don't accidentally clip that. Really, this little clipping, this is really important. You have to do this. Otherwise, your curve, like if you're not sewing the bias to the inside of the garment and you're just putting it on, you're tipping the garment and it's going to show on the inside and the outside, you don't have to clip it. But you do if it's going to go to one side or the other completely. And you really just need to focus on the curvier areas. I'm going to do all of it. I feel like I'm saying the same things to you guys over and over again, but I just don't know who's seen what. But the reason we do this is because the cut edge here is a different measurement to where it's going to be when it's folded to the seam. And so if you were to measure this spot on the garment as opposed to this spot, it's a different measurement, and that's why you need to release the tension of the seam allowance so that it can kind of splay out and then lay flat where you're going to end up putting it in its final spot. Does that make sense? Okay, is that my stitch or is that my stitch? Okay, good. And any place that my stay stitch is showing, I'll probably just remove it because part of it right now I'm actually snipping through anyway. All right, we can get rid of this bias here. Oh, I already have my gray in there. Okay, fair enough. Anyone else sewing right now? I know it's a work day. I'll be back on Saturday, but I like streaming on Thursdays as well. Okay, so I'm going to understitch my binding, and understitching means I'm going to push the seam allowances towards the bias and stitch onto the bias. And understitching basically it means that I'm stitching to the facing piece, the bias piece, whatever it is, not to the garment, and it's going to go under with it. I want all of it to go together, and this is going to help make it behave a little bit. So there's my stay stitch showing right there. I'm going to pull this partly out right now so that I can find it again. There we go. I probably could have stitched that a little less than 1/4 of an inch, but it gets pretty hard to sew at anything less than 1/4 of an inch. I really wanted it to be stable as well. Keep your garment up on the machine table. That way it's not pulling against your needle. You really don't want to fight that, and it's dangerous. I don't want to see anybody getting their eyes poked out with a flying needle. And yes, that can happen. It's happened to me. So I'm trying to decide what to sew on Saturday. I would love any suggestions. Right now, the projects I have planned are that I would like to sew in the very near future are an Archer button-up, which is like a full button front collared shirt by Neckline Studio. I've made one before. It's been a few years. And I have some fabric for a couple. Ginger jeans. I think we all know those. And I also have that probably lesser known pattern, the Cheyenne tunic, and no adjusting of stitch length for the stay stitch. Yeah, you can if you want, but I'm using my standard stitch for everything right now. If I were pulling the threads, I would probably have lengthened it a little bit, but not in a stay stitch. You don't want to pull that one. You want it to be very stable. Okay, where is that little spot? I want to pull out a little bit more of it. Where'd it go? Now it's just totally disappeared. Okay, fine. Oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. Is that what you mean, Vanessa? Adjusting the stitch length for the initial stay stitch or for my understitch? Okay, now I'm going to turn the garment right side out. And you can see, like, my neckline is not going to wing out. Like, see that? It's pretty snug. It's going to go under. I'm not going to get that issue. All right, so this is why we started our bias. Remember, I folded the first edge, attached it, and then the last edge went like this. And now, look, it's totally finished like that, without having to do any too much fussy stuff. And I think when I start right now, let's see, which one's the back? There's the back. I'm actually going to start right behind it, just like that. I'm going to fold this a little bit, and then I'm going to fold this one on top of it, just like that. I really don't want my neckline to get stretched out. That's my goal here, because I see that's an issue, and I really want to come up with a solution that helps everyone figure that out. Yeah, have you had that issue, Vanessa? Have you made this with the neckline doing that? I was looking at Instagram and I saw a few people's, and then I saw a few people kind of, you know, like, help, how do I fix this? And I've actually had a friend, a good friend who sews. She texted me late at night and she's like, look what happened. And I don't remember what garment it was. And I didn't see how she sewed it. So I was like, well, you know, these are the kind of things I would have done. All right. Now, because I pulled it, it's pretty easy to sew. Like, it really wants to go in and lay flat. I don't even need my awl. Oh, I forgot to change the thread color. Oh, but I kind of like it. What do you guys think? I should probably switch it, huh? Too many thread changes. You don't expect thread changes on something like this. Yeah, I'm gonna switch it. Sorry guys. It won't take me long. It won't take me long. Oh, I think I lost my pocket pin. Oh no. Yeah, so the other thing I see this on is the Moneta. And really is what's happening when a neckline does that is the neckline is on the bias. And because it's just because of the curve, it's just the nature of a neckline, because that curve is on the bias, it has a tendency to get stretched out really easily. And then that's what happens is when you go to sew it down, then it will fix it that way. That's why. I'm just using my awl to take it out because the stitches are big enough. Okay. I didn't do a back stitch, and the reason I didn't originally is because I just want the least amount of bulk as possible. Yeah, see, I've had that same issue, Vanessa, and I just saw so many people with it. It's mainly because this is a woven and it's a big neckline, so there's a lot of real estate for that bias to kind of give you trouble. Okay. Oh, I almost did it again. You guys. I'm going to blame this on you. Cleaning up my area there. This just means that, so I could do a contrast bobbin from my upper thread, but I'm not going to because I kind of have a big needle in my machine. It's why my sewing doesn't look very precise. I would use a size 14 if I were using a home machine, but I'm not even going to tell you what size needle I have. You're going to switch the channel right away. If I use a contrast bobbin, then it will most likely show. So I'm just going to switch both. So it's going to have a contrast thread on the top. That's just how it goes. All right, let's hope my poor little neckline is not getting too tired now. All right, let's start this over. Actually, I'm going to refold this right here. I always fold this one first, get it where I want it, and then put this one over it. That's the most bulk I have. And I'm going to sew my first stitches on a scrap piece of fabric because it's going to show on the outside. All right. Oh, you're knitting. Oh, awesome. Oh, you quilt too, Vanessa? Oh, see, I'm jealous. I don't quilt. I have had a quilt that I've been working on for a few years. I'm at the point where I just want to hand it to someone to finish. Yeah, I have sewing projects like that too, you guys. I know, I can get a lot done, but quilting is like, it's hard. I spend 45 minutes cutting out one square. It takes me 5 minutes to sew it together, probably longer. And then I have to start the whole thing over again. Like, oh my gosh. Why? And then when I was telling the gals at the fabric store this, they kind of chuckled. And they were like, what quilt pattern did you pick? And I think it's called Modern Building Box. And they, you know, I got the like, I could tell they wanted to eye roll and they didn't. They were very polite about it. Like, yeah, you noob, why did you pick that pattern as your first quilt? That's a lot of sewing. I should have picked something that had a, you know, like the same block like 10 times, you know. So I haven't been knitting much the last couple of years because it's so hot where I live, but it's really calling my name again. Okay, I'm getting a little torquing. I'm not a big fan of that. It kind of happens with the bias sometimes. And because I could be probably making sure this is straighter to my seam so that it's not happening. I'm going to see if that fixes that little spot right there. I feel like I'm stretching this and I don't want to be stretching it. Let's see how I did. a little nervous. Okay, I don't think it's gonna flip to the outside. I still have a little bit of it happening. Let's see. Oh yeah, I still have a little bit of it happening there. It's okay back here. I'm having it right here. This is what it is. I'm reading your comment. Oh, awesome. See, that was smart, Vanessa. You didn't pick something fancy and complicated. You're trying something reasonable, and I didn't do that. Okay, so here's the trick. I know what's wrong. I know not what's wrong with this neckline, but why this is giving people trouble. You have to counteract the bias of the neckline. At the same time, you have to have a long enough piece that's going to lay flat and not be stretched. So I'm stretching the bias to fit the neckline so that it's not going to stretch it out. But at the same time, I really need this to not be pulling in right here. So probably stretching it a little less would be a better idea. And making sure I'm stretching, well, I don't want to stretch the bias. I might take this out. Let me see. Kind of want to iron it and see what happens. But yeah, now I know what it is. The back looks fine. And it's because you have to counteract this bias right here, but at the same time, you need it to lay flat. I feel like putting a longer piece of bias would be better. What do you guys think? I'm going to take it out. I know, you guys don't want to watch me take this out probably, but I'm pretty quick at taking out a seam. When I was a mentor for this art institute, that was the free service I provided. I would rip out all seams that you sewed wrong. Then that way they were a little less apt to try things. Be like, just give it to me, I'll pull it out really quick. But we're going to figure this out. I think I'm going to add a little piece to my, take out part of the neck and add a little piece to my bias. The stay stitch is also really important. We wanted that stay stitch in there. And you know, I should mention, you guys, that Sonia Phillip has a creative, a Craftsy class, not Creative Bug, sorry. A Craftsy class on sewing some of her patterns. I'm pretty sure this one and the dress number 1 probably. I'm not sure. I'm really sorry I don't know that information. I hear it's really great. One of the viewers in my stream mentioned it a few weeks ago. She says it's a really great class. So I'm definitely not trying to take away from her sewing style or technique. She is the owner of this pattern and she knows all the tips and all the ways to do it. So but definitely check it out. And you own those classes for life. So they're pretty useful. They have them in just about everything you could imagine too. All right, so we already have that out. So it's just best just to do it at the same moment, just like that. I'm gonna think about this for a second. I've already clipped my neckline, so that's a bummer. I'll have to sew around that. I'm gonna take out my understitching right here. See, so the little thing I'm always talking about, how when you clip your neckline, because the cut edge is a different length. Oh shit, yeah, Christina, you're the one. Oh, it's on Creative Bug, not Craftsy. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Yeah, see, Christina, yeah. So I'm finding, like, it's been a while since I've sewn one of these. Sewn like this kind of neckline. So yeah, so like the thing I say where you want to clip your neckline, because you know that seam allowance, that seam line edge and your seam cut seam edge is a different length from each other, and that's why you need to clip it, because it won't lay flat. This is kind of the same principle. Where you're sewing the binding, like really this won't do that if I just tipped the edge of the tunic and didn't sew it to one side. Then I wouldn't get that issue. The way I've already set this up. You can get that issue, but the way I set this up to sew, it would be now great if I just left it on the edge just like this. That could be the fix that I do for this one, so I don't have to take out all of the bias. But I'm gonna take out the understitching right now so that I have options and I can see what I want to, how I want to proceed. So Christina, what did you ever fix that, or did you just kind of live with it? Or what do people, how do they like fixing it? Because what I would like is a tried and true. And I know a tried and true. I just didn't end up using it on this one because I was trying to combat one thing, forgetting about the other. Don't you love it how I'm always trying to figure things out in front of you for the first time? But sometimes I feel like seeing the thought process behind it, behind why you do something, helps kind of seat the information better, and you understand the logic behind it. And, you know, it's all engineering. All of this is engineering. It's why I really like pattern drafting and stuff. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys is, how would you feel about watching pattern drafting? I feel like no one wants to see that, but I feel like it's the one thing people ask me the most questions about. Like, how do I add pockets to this? How do I make this a facing? How do I change these things? How do I add seam allowance? How do I grade sizing? You know? So you didn't stretch the bias at all when you attached it and turned out a lot better. Then the outer edge could stretch a little for long. Yeah, see? See, and I was doing that so that it wouldn't get stretched out. See, I feel like there's a happy balance, because if you put too big of a piece of binding on, like if you don't stretch it at all, it's going to wing out. You know what I mean? And all biases are going to act differently. Like this chambray is really open. So see, if I just put this on the edge like this right now, it would lay flat. See that? Right? Yeah, then the outer edge could stretch a little for the longer distance. Yeah, so if I had a longer piece, so maybe what I should do is just take this off and use a longer piece, not stretch so much, and then we can still have it go to the inside. And we're already there, right? Let's take it out. I bet that Dottie Angel frock is really cute. Her stuff's really cute. I see so many like things I want to make, and I love them so much, but they're just not my silhouette. I'm just too Rubenesque for some of them. Like that, the washi dress, is that what it's called? The washi dress? I think that thing is so cute, but that would legit look maternity on me. Like there's no way I could get around that. And those days are over. I don't want to look maternity ever again. You feel me? So I'm not going there. Even the dress I'm wearing today, I'm wearing a Moneta, and I modified it to be a wrap, so you can see there's a wrap right here. And that's because I wanted a V-neck, and sewing a V-neck on your serger, like hemming it. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting this started right here because I don't want to accidentally pluck something else up. Let me do it right here. I really like V-necks, and to have a V-neck in knit, you have to kind of do some tricky stuff to do that. Totally possible. But I wanted a wrap as well, and the wrap just disappeared with this fabric. You just don't even see that it's a wrap. And it also is such a wide expanse. It sometimes falls off my shoulders a little bit. But the waist on this dress is a little higher than a natural waist. And I ended up hemming this like right above my knee. So it's almost baby doll. Like it looks a little bit like a baby doll dress, which is kind of funny. But I think it's, you know, the print's kind of playful, and I think it kind of works for that. I think later today I am going to create a pattern from the Moneta bodice into a t-shirt, because my new bibs really need a like a close fitting t-shirt, and so I picked up a couple of knits at the fabric store the other day, and those will be so fast to sew together. But see, like that could be a potentially a pattern drafting video I can do, is like, okay, I'm going to modify this bodice into a shirt. If that's something you guys are interested in, I'll set it up. I just don't want to like spring that on you and you'd be like, oh, this is just way too much for me. But I do like pattern drafting. And if I know exactly what people are looking for, I can keep it kind of on that topic. That's what I used to do before chicken boots. Designing and pattern drafting. Sorry, I'm really trying not to stretch out my neckline. That's why I'm like taking a little bit longer on this. Tray, boring, I know. What are you working on, Christina? Anyone have any preferences on what I sew next? The Archer, Ginger Jeans. Kind of want to do another pair of Burnside bibs. The Cheyenne Tunic, which is really cute. What else? What else do I have out there? I have the Francis dress and some fabric, and which is by Green Bee Patterns. I'm going to, have you guys ever ordered anything from Sprout? They're like the offshoot of Spoonflower. And so Spoonflower is a fabric design service. Anybody can design fabric on there. It's really easy to do, as far as like you can get up and running really fast. I feel like I could be a spokesperson for Spoonflower because I am not a graphic person. Graphics as far as like my skill set. Oh God, toddlers, yes. I remember when my daughter started walking, she walked really early, like at 10 months old. And I remember, you know, it's like so exciting. They're about to walk and all that. And you are kind of encouraging that. But what I didn't realize was that then they're silent and they can sneak up on you and you can turn around and they're standing right there and then you bowl them over. I just remember that really well. At least when they're crawling, you hear them coming. So Spoonflower, if you want to design your own fabric or you want something really specific, even if it's just a one-time project, you can design it on there. They have a free software program called PicMonkey that's actually pretty easy to use. And they have, you can upload a design as well. And you can print it on like, I think there's like 19 different fabric bases right now. It's a lot. I am no graphic artist. I feel like it would have been really good for me to do that because there's so many things I want to do involving graphic skills, but I just never did that. And I did design a few fabrics that we've used for chicken boots on there, like the knit print and stuff, but it's, you know, it's not the best fabric design as a fabric design goes. But where I'm going with this is there's other designers on there, and there's some amazing fabrics on there. I mean, just really beautiful stuff. And there's definitely a little bit of a learning curve on learning the fabric bases and what kinds of things. Like I suggest printing non-black background fabrics on your first few. The black prints really well now, but sometimes it can look dark gray, and you just want to make sure that that designer knows how to deal with black. But then they have an offshoot called Sprout Patterns where you can pick out a number of patterns, one of which is the Moneta like I'm wearing, and then have it printed onto the fabric using one of the Spoonflower prints. And it looks like the pattern pieces are printed directly onto the fabric, and they are, but in the shape of the print. So I don't know how else to describe that, but I'm going to order one soon and show you guys because it's really cool. They'll even sew it for you too. They have a white glove service, which my friend used, and it turned out gorgeous. Okay, so I'm not quite thrilled. Now my neckline is a little bit stretched out. It's a big neckline, see right there. So I'm going to iron that up and kind of make that a little less. I should show you guys, like, I just got this really new I just got this little new ironing mat. I'm going to see if you can see it. Let's see if I turn it this way. Can you see that, you guys, right here? This is like it's a wool felt pad, And I'm ironing directly on that. And then I've got this for curves. And that's all I'm using now. And that way I can have a nice compact ironing setup here. Oh, Debbie, I've knit a lot of Debbie Bliss stuff, especially for little kids. Yes, I want to make pajama pants too. I'm wondering if I have a pattern that could work for that, because I really want that too. I could use some. I don't like the pajama pants in the store. They're always like low rise or too big waisted, you know? And then like, geez, they're falling down. Let me just iron this really quick. Yeah, kiddo knits. Like, oh man, and when your kid gets big, they don't want things that you knit for them anymore. And by the time you finished, even if they did, they wouldn't want it by the time you're done. I know, I'm stereotyping, but it is kind of true. It's kind of what happened to me. Okay, so my neckline back in order. Just beat it back into submission. I'm going to use a longer piece of bias. I'm going to sew it from the inside circle, but from the right side of the garment. Yeah, so there are some pajama pant patterns out there. I feel like, let's see, I think it's Grainline Studio that makes some pajama pants. I've made the Lakeside pajamas and they work really good, but I feel like those are shorts, right? The Lakeside pajamas. That's actually one thing I did on Sprout. Super fast pattern. A lot of bias binding, but my machine, I have a bias machine, and it was actually kind of handy. It worked really good. Okay, so we're going to do this again. You get to watch me sew bias. Now I'm a little worried about all my little snips that I did. Not ideal. What happened? Oh, my thread came undone. Let's see. Okay. Here we are, like it never happened, right? I'll look for some pajama pant pattern suggestions, Vanessa. I know. Oh, shoot. I just did this with the seam going the wrong way. So this time I'm going to fix this. I didn't realize this piece had a seam in it. Well, I just sewed it actually, didn't I? I just forgot to check which way. I'm just going to flip it over because this fabric doesn't have a right side. That way I don't have to remove it from my neckline. Like this. And then I can be back on my merry way. I feel like it's mistakes in sewing that make us better. Don't you agree? Make sure all my threads are in there. I'm going to open up my seam. Make sure my dress is up on my table so it's not pulling, especially when I don't want any unnecessary stretch. Pushing my seams to the back. I think I'll have a little more time for this stream after the fabrics launch on Saturday. But I do have a show to go to October 6th and 7th. I'm going to Lambtown and I'll have a booth there. I'm really watching my stay stitch and my clips to make sure that I get them all inside the seam allowance. And I'm making sure I'm not stretching my neck or my bias. I'm gonna just kind of keep it flat this time. Clips are gonna be really important in this neckline laying flat as well. There's no need to back tack because I stitched on top of itself, and then I'm going to go back and turn it and stitch it down. So now I do need to clip my binding because it didn't get clipped with the rest. So I'm going to follow my original clips. Just like that. It's a little thread left over from before. Are any of you guys out west? Because I know Oregon Flock and Fiber are happening this coming weekend. This coming weekend, did I say coming weekend? Coming weekend. And there'll be some great people there. Okay, that right there. That looks like my clip got super close to that seam. So we're going to fix that right now. I've never been to Oregon Flock and Fiber. The year I got in, something happened and I had to back out, which I rarely do. I've only done that twice for a show. My husband travels a lot. He and my daughter right now are in Sweden. Or actually they're in Copenhagen, I should say. They just got there today. So sometimes I gotta plan my stuff around his travel schedule. Oh, you are, Christina? Awesome. All right, you gotta say hi to my friends there, like Laura Jean from A Knitted Wit and Maria from A Needle Runs Through It, another amazing sewer. Amazing. She's so amazing. Such a great sewer. All right. I'm going to look at this right now. Let's see. I still feel like it's going to do that a little bit. See? Maybe I do just do the edge. I don't mind that look. But I'd rather conquer this issue. And it does. It needs more down here like this. Maybe we should watch Sonia's class, huh? I think that she doesn't go to the inside, to be honest. I think she actually goes to the edge. Yeah, I think that that's the best solution for this. The other idea you can do is you could cut a curved piece of fabric and make a facing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that double gauze. I kind of took a long time to get on the double gauze train. And I made a dress, a sundress out of it, and I really like it. I just like how, I don't know what the word is for it. Everyone describes it, and it's just nothing ever really describes it really well. Like when people were using double gauze, I could only think of like what little babies things were made out of from like the 90s and the 80s, and I was like, how is this great for a garment? But then when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is totally different. And that's sometimes like that, fabric trends like that happen. And, you know, it's just, you know, a different word for the same thing, or the same word for a different thing. And that's, I think, that word, the double gauze. But that would be really cute pajama bottoms, totally. And it doesn't really it's not that it gets wrinkled. It's more like it gets fluffy. And it has that kind of like lived in feel, and it's really comfortable. All right, I'm trying to decide what I want to do, like if I want to stitch this and see if I managed it, or if because I think it's still going to do that. I think it's just too big of a curve. I think it's too big of a curve, and it wants to be on the edge. I think the best thing, if you don't want to stretch out, is to do a facing. I still think it's going to do it. It has llamas on it. Awesome. So what I could do is get the same fabric and make it on the edge so that it matches, or I don't want it to look like a pajama. I'm going to turn it. You guys are really suffering through me. This is how I drag out a really simple project to 2 hours. So see, look at that. It wants to lay flat when it stays up. Good indication. Yeah, it's going to do it. You can feel it. The reason is this is just too tight. And I don't mean tight as in like it's wrong. It's that it's just the length of this that sews to this edge isn't the same as it is here. And it really needs to be a facing, like a curved piece of fabric, you know, like that you would cut a parallel piece of fabric right here and then stitch it down. That's the best way to do this. Be fine on the back neck, but the front neck. But maybe I could do like a little bit like that. What do you guys think of that? Just do a little tiny bit showing. I'm kind of determined though, I'm not gonna lie. I like challenges. But see, when I pin it, it's not giving me the best indication that it is going to work. Because it looks like it's going to, and I can't trust the pins. The pins are not sewing. You know, it is not the same as sewing. But yeah, it's going to pull up. You can see it just like that. So let's see what we got here. This is my little tunic. The color is just, it's not great. And here's my little pocket. It's not looking too little kiddish. You like the piping look? Gosh darn me for not sewing samples, pretending like I, you know, have never sewed it before. So you can see this fabric actually is part of that fabric that got in the dryer with my jeans and turned blue. But I figured it'll help this. You guys think, what do you think? The little piping look? What if I did, I think that might look better. What do you think of that? My pocket the same. I want your feedback. I could still put this trim back on. I kind of like that. Yeah. Maybe I will do a basic pocket with no piping, no bias around the edge, just like this. Put the trim on, and then a little bit right here. What do you guys think? Yeah, I like that. What do you guys think? I want your feedback. I like that. Good thing we didn't attach the pocket. We'll save that pocket for something else someday. I'm gonna sew this pocket right now while I have cream thread on. Actually, maybe I'll finish my neckline, because once I finish the neckline, I won't have to switch back to that color again. You're hoping it works. Yeah, me too, me too. How many times can Sarah me change her thread color for a simple thing. Yeah, I think you're right, Christina. It looks classier that way. Because I don't really want it to be juvenile, you know? I like the juvenile ones. Like, I see some cute prints people making. I think this tunic lends itself to everything from like wool gabardine and a classy look to Day of the Dead Skulls, you know? So, see everything. All right, so I think to do this, I'm going to pin it. Just like that. I haven't done this in a while. I'm faking piping, honestly. It's not the way you would normally do it, because you could do this. Ooh, I could think of like 3 ways to sew this. Wait, it's not done though. It's not done and perfect. What are you talking about? It's far from done and perfect. Where is my cherry pie? There it is. My cherry pie needs a weight. I'm just making you guys suffer through all my little, you know, things here, because why not? We're in it together. I do this for the fun of it. Just want to sew with people. I'm really enjoying sewing clothing again. It really is like the cobbler's children, you know, eventually. You know, I have a sewing business. People ask me if I make my own clothes, and I just don't really have that didn't really have that kind of time, because I'd have to come in on the weekends to do it. And if I came in here on the weekends, you know what would happen is that I would start working a little bit too. And so I don't really sew for myself here. I do on my birthday. It's kind of a famous thing that I have been very, very good about every year on my birthday, no matter what is happening. And there's been some years I shouldn't have done it, and it worked out fine. That I cut a bunch of stuff the day before, the week before, whenever I can. And then on my birthday, I sew just for me. I'm trying to decide right now if I want to edge stitch this first and then sew it down. And I might. I think that might ensure success since I'm faking the piping look. I'm just kind of tipping it. I'm pushing all the seam allowances to the garment, by the way. I'll be kind of bummed if I do this and it still get that weird flip though. I think that this pattern just needs a facing if you want your bias to go to the inside. But if you want the bias to be on the edge, no problem. You won't get that as long as you put that stay stitch in there. You know? Yeah, but this is a really simple tunic. I mean, in some ways, some of these simple things, you can just really make them look less simple, and then you have more time to spend on fun design details, right? Because it was a kind of a simple thing to sew. It's kind of an ideal thing. But you're right, I needed a pajama pattern. I was just thinking about that the other day, and that would be kind of a fun thing to sew. And we could do elastic and a waistband, which we haven't done. We did it on the burn side. It still wants to do it a little, you guys. I can feel it. But if I stitch kind of close to this, I think it's going to be fine. So if I do this maybe, like this, yeah, faking it till I make it here. I kind of want to sew from the outside. Just so then I can see what I'm doing. But I think that this one I'm going to have to bite the bullet and sew from the inside. But I'm going to put a lot of pins in it, which I don't normally do because I want to mimic the sewing. So I'm tucking this little edge under the seam allowance of the neckline. using it kind of like a guide. I think it might work. What do you guys think? I'm getting it a little bit, but once I put the pins in and I wrap it on the seam allowance, it seems to kind of calm it down a little bit. If you wanted to make a facing for this garment, you would trace the neckline, and then Carolyn pajamas, that's it. You would trace the neckline and the shoulder of each pattern piece, and then you would make a parallel pattern, a line to the neck edge, and cut that out, and that's your pattern piece. And then you want it to be the width that you want plus seam allowance. So remember, the seam allowance is on the neck, then you'd have the width of your pattern piece, and then the seam allowance that you need to finish that, unless you serge it or something. But that's how you would put a facing on this. It's just a parallel line, exactly the same dimensions. And then if you put stay stitches on both of those, the only problem you could potentially have with doing a facing is stretching out the seam edge, this one right here. So you would definitely want to do the stay stitch, but that would prevent this neckline gapping thing that people get, is having a dedicated facing or binding the edge of the neckline. I switched to the blue thread, but now I'm thinking I need to switch back to cream. All right, I'm gonna wing it, you guys. I don't sit there pinning for very long. I just want to start sewing. Sewing is my pinning. I'll deal with the consequences if I see them. I learn from my mistakes, right? Oops. Sorry, you have to see my arm there. Sorry. Keep snapping. It's a heel lift. It's my heel, and I have different shoes on today, and I haven't had a heel lift till recently. Been years since I had a heel lift. Okay, I have cream on both. Yeah, the Caroline pajamas, that's the ones I've seen people sew pajama bottoms. All right, I'm gonna start and go onto the front since I have most of that pinned and see what happens. Ooh, it's very pokey. They're poking me. I don't like that. In fact, I'm going to start away from my little start-stop there. I don't want to do that. No, I want to start on the back because I want my back tack to be back here. I may even just like start and kind of sew in the same stitches so I don't have the back tack. But I am going to sew on a little piece of scrap. My machine tends to do a big thing of thread on my first sewing. When I change the bobbin, I get a what I call thread vomit. These pins are poking me. I don't like using pins. Why are you guys making me? Yeah, it kind of wants to do that flippy thing. Trying to get it to relax as best I can. Where's my pie? Not used to using pins at the machine, so I don't really have a smaller pin cushion yet. But Christina, aren't you sewing the Jenny dress as well? Isn't that you that I talked with on Instagram and sewing a circle skirt hem? Pretty sure. Sorry if it's not. I'm really terrible with names. It's nothing personal ever. Ask my friends. I'm terrible. My husband too. My daughter and my husband are amazing. Thank goodness. All right. So that's how it's looking. Okay. not perfect. I am excited about this fabric still though. It's cute. Yeah, the penny dress, exactly. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I followed you on Instagram because I wanted to see how it goes. Now, those circle skirts, man, they are awesome to wear and a bitch to hem. Excuse my English. I don't like hemming them either. I feel like the best thing to do is the quarter inch seam. You know, you can hang them up now. You can just hang it from the waistline, like if you have like a pants hanger that can hold it, or just fold it over a hanger and pin it. You can start hanging it up now if you can't get to sew it for a while. That way you don't have to worry about it later. The weight of the dress is gonna make it probably pull a little more. Actually, I don't think it will, because it's at the bottom. So you can try that. All right, so we're beating our neck into submission, since this is most people's concern, is that they get the stretched out neck. I think that our little piping edge solution looks good and it's working. Thanks for holding my hand. So I basically just decided to kind of use this bias as a facing rather than binding. It's not the most ideal binding in this situation because it's so open weave, such an open weave that it is a little loosey-goosey. I'm being very gentle and slow right now. All right, you guys. I'm good with that. What do you guys think? Can you see that? It is laying flat, see? I get some torquing, and that's because I didn't really set this up to sew it this way, and I'm gonna be fine with that. I'm gonna iron it and it'll be fine. Once it's washed a few times, it's gonna break in anyway. And that torquing, even if you don't have it when you sew it at the beginning, can happen during the washing, unfortunately. So if it really got bad, I would go back after I washed it a few times and take it out and redo it. I don't mind doing things like that. Sometimes there are certain things that bug me, and I just really want them to be a certain way. Okay, so I lost my pins on my pocket. So one of the tricks I sometimes do is I hold it up to a light to see if I can see where the pin holes were. I really can't. So I'm just going to hold it up to me to figure out where I want my pocket. I want it like right here. What do you guys think? All we have left is to attach the pocket and do the hems. We spent a lot of time on our neckline because we troubleshot a few different things. And I think that was good because it reinforced some things I haven't thought about in a while or sewn. And I think that's always a good, good exercise. I'll move this in a little up right there. And then I'm going to mark this again. Actually, I'm just going to use my chocolate liner. This thing. Do you guys have one of these? I love this thing. It's going to be about right here. Like that. And I'm going to hem my pocket. And I'm going to attach my little, my little lace trim because, yeah, you're not taking that away from me. Because I really like it. It's going on all the things. I'm really into this color right now. I'm sad we don't get to use our other pocket, but I just don't think it's going to work out with this now. And I have extra of this, right? So, hey. I like it like that. Yeah, I'm gonna do it right there. The one thing I want to make sure is that I just get it straight or even on the other side. I'm gonna double check it. You know, when I looked, Christina, when I looked at that hashtag of the penny dress, what did I confused it with something else at first, because it looks really similar to something else, and I think there is 2 penny dresses, but yeah, because I have the one by Colette, that's what it is, and I was like, wow, that looks really different than what I thought that dress is going to look like. So there's another one out there, which is kind of cool. All right, so because it's the curved pocket, this is my little trick for getting the curve. I'm gonna put a stay stitch around the curve edge. You can just put it on the curved corners and that's it. I'm just kind of walking around like that, and then I'm gonna pull up the threads, kind of like what we did on the neckline. What we do sometimes on a sleeve, and what we added this to the neckline, but we didn't need to pull it up or anything. Just like that. And then it's going to want to turn under right there. I'm not going to get gathers in there or little tucks. I don't want those to show, and I don't want my stitching to show. I'm just going to do this so that I get a nice curve around the pocket edge. When I go to sew it on, it's going to want to do this because it's taut. See? So it's already curving like that. And then I'm going to center my pocket there. I'm just going to put a few pins in it in the middle. All right, Vanessa. Awesome. We'll see you Saturday. Thanks for stopping by. Have fun. Happy sewing. Enjoy the beginning of fall. I'm just going to slip a box under here to pin against. Do you ever do that? I sometimes put the my ruler, my see-through ruler under there. Just like this. And I always put 2. If you put 1, it can kind of pivot and jiggle around. So I'm going to put 2. So it would have been smart to put this pocket on the front before we sewed everything together. And the reason we didn't do that is because I really wanted to see how it was going to look with the garment. Because remember, this was the one I sewed first that I was going to put on here. And I'm not going to do it anymore by the time I got to this point because of the neckline finish that we're going to have to do. All right, so when I sew my pockets on, I start upside down. Because it's really good to reinforce the top corners of your pocket because your hand's going to go in and out of it, and you're going to be stressing it, especially if you put things in it. I know me, I'll put my wallet in this pocket. I know it's not very classy, but I know I will. My glasses, my car keys, things like that, and I want to reinforce that corner at the top, so I'm going to make like a little triangle, and I start upside down just so that I don't have to come back and do it later. So I'm going to start at the edge of the pocket, right, the edge. I'm going to go into the top hem. I'm making sure my dress isn't under there. I felt like it was there, but it's just thick. Then I pivot, and it's just 2 stitches wide is my triangle at the top. I'm so close to the edge there. It's a little less than 2 stitches. Pivot again, and then I just continue on. I'm going to get rid of this thread here because there's no reason for it, and I don't want it to cause me issues later. Like, see, it's already, I'm going to pull it to the inside of the pocket like that. And now I'm going to turn under this edge, get as straight as possible. My trim wants to poke it out, so I'm going to say no to that. Use my awl. just like that. And so now I see, can you see, you can't see, I'll show you in a second. You'll see the little triangle that I created at the top to reinforce the pocket opening. And now when I get to this curve, it kind of wants to turn under all by itself. Just like that. Make sure I got a straight edge here. And I don't need to pin it because that stay stitch curve is really helping me out. Just kind of ooch around the corner, just like that. And trim those threads, get them out of the way. I want to make my bottom straight. Now that I'm past my little curve, till I get to the next one, just like that. Making sure you guys following along there. I think the trick with these also, like the thing you're worried about, you could be worried about, is the curves are symmetrical. And if you really wanted to ensure a symmetrical curve here and here, you can draw on the pocket at the point you're going to do your stay stitch. And then that way you know that when you go to sew the rest of your pocket, that at least you know that you can follow that stay stitch edge because it was drawn perfectly symmetrical and you can trust it. Okay, so can you see my little triangle there? Like that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. When I used to add this triangle after the fact, and then it would be just so many, you know, starts and stops and stuff like that because I had to add it afterward. Wait, where did I finish? I finished at the top of my trim, so I just want to make sure I'm symmetrical. There we go. There's my little pocket. It's kind of long and narrow, huh? All right, so this is where we're at so far. We have our neck and our pocket. Yeah, that's pretty cute. Pretty excited about that. All right, we have our hems. So you want to make sure you don't have any little weird transitions like that. So I'm going to trim that a little bit. Remember when we put the sleeve on, there's no designated armhole. So you have to center the sleeve on the shoulder seam and then find your starting and stop point on the side seam. And so this can happen. You might get some little unevenness at your hem or your sleeve hem. This fabric's a little thready. It looks like a quilting cotton, but it's not. It's got a little bit more shape to it than that. It's a Japanese fabric that I just saw at the fabric store. They just got it, and I was like, I will have some of that. And that I'm going to make an archer out of this one that I got, the archer button-up. All right, I'm going to just do the recommended seams. I think actually the recommended seam is just a 1/2 inch, but I'm going to do fold it twice, and that's because I don't want the serging to show, and I also want it to not have to be needing as much ironing as possible. So I like to fill the hem with the hem allowance. I feel like that helps a little bit. I really should look up what the scientific solution to that is because it is a pet peeve. Most of my hand sewn things, I feel like the ironing they need are really in things like hem finishes and stuff like that. And if I didn't have to do that, I wouldn't have to be ironing as much. I actually enjoy ironing, but it's a turnoff for a lot of people. And so I feel like finding a solution. And it's just like, if you don't like doing dishes, why don't buy hand washed items for your kitchen. I have a lot of those hand wash items. There's my hem. And you'll notice that I did it from the inside of the sleeve. So I leave it right side out so that I can sew on the curve so that it's like this to my machine head. Now, if you're using a home sewing machine, you might actually have, this is above your table. It's not like in your table like mine is. And then you can go around the free arm of the machine. That's what that's called. If you have a extended table plate on your machine bed, you can take that off sometimes and use the free arm to be able to sew sleeve and pant hems. That's what it's for. Helps a lot. So I'm just going to do the half inch, just like that. I'm making sure my whole garment is up here so it's not pulling on me, pulling on my needle. All right, you guys, what am I sewing on Saturday? Tell me. Ginger jeans, Archer button-up, a dress, the Cheyenne tunic. What else do I have out there? I have a lot of things. Feels like something's crawling on me. It's my hair. My hair's a little crazy right now. There we go. And now at the bottom. I really hope I like this. You know, like I love the idea of it. It's not typically my silhouette because I'm so curvy. I feel like it's a little, looks a little big for me. But I love the way it looks on other people. I'm going to blend this in. Make sure I'm not cutting my undergarment. And this is probably because I just didn't get it quite right on one side of the sleeve. That side's fine. And I'm going to do the same. There's, I think, a 1 1/4 inch hem allowance on this. I think I'm going to just do the fold half inch again, maybe 5/8, a little bit wider, because I want to fill it up like I said, because I'm hoping that'll counteract any ironing. Because what I'm talking about when I say that is if I folded this 1/4 and then I folded it up 1 inch, I feel like that's when I get, because this is 2 layers and this is 3 layers, this is 3 layers, this is 2 layers. I feel like sometimes that gives me that problem when I'm ironing. And this has a slight curve to it, so I think it'll be a little easier to sew if it's narrower. I don't know if you're still here, Christina, but another tip on sewing that hem, I feel like really what you're worried about is the drop of the hem. It doesn't seem like you need any sewing tips, but if you have some really curved areas that are tricky to turn up and hem, you can do like what I just did on this pocket. You can sew a little stay stitch around it and then pull it gently, and it will want to fold right there for your curve. It'll kind of help it behave. I'm trying not to get any torquing on this hem because that also will contribute to more ironing, and also, you know, you'll see it when I'm wearing it, and I don't want that as well, so. So barring any issues with your neckline, like we really troubleshot a few different scenarios to sew that. And I feel like we're closer to coming up with a tried and true solution for something like that. We obviously all see garments in the marketplace that have that treatment. So why is it such a mystery? Well, sometimes it's just the fabric, and because of the machines they get to use in the factories, they have special machines that are doing that. They have special binding machines that'll do it. Things like that, that they, you know, they're even like sometimes applying a little interfacing or a piece of fabric as a stay that are just invisible to our eye, and we don't know how they get that finish. All right, we're done. And see, it has that kind of like wrinkly look, and I kind of like that. It looks very comfortable. What do you guys think? It's looking a little pajama top. I'm hoping it doesn't when I wear it with the right thing. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Christine, that's what I thought. Yeah, you're going to have to rope your hubby in to help. They do make skirt markers, and it's this freestanding thing that you measure, you kind of like, it's a freestanding ruler that does this, and then it has like a little like platform, and then it has a sliding thing on it that you put it at the height from the floor that you want, and then it goes like this to your skirt edge goes right into that, and then there's a little spot to pin through the plates. It's really nifty. I don't even know if they sell those at regular fabric stores anymore. That's another way, but you'd still have to have help to do that. But yeah, I would just stand on the coffee table or a chair, something higher if your husband's tall, and then just tell him, mark up from the ground 16 inches and pin right there all the way around. And then that way you'll get that kind of even hem. All right, guys, I'm going to be making more of these. I'm looking forward to trying this on. I feel like it would be really cute with my new overalls, which I need to give you guys pictures of. I know. But I need help. I need my hubby for that as well. So, all right, guys. I hope that you got something out of that, and I'm really glad we kind of troubleshot that neckline. It is laying flat. You can see, got the nice little tip edge. I'm into that. Simple hems, little lace edge pocket. We really made this our own, right? So I'm looking forward to wearing it, and maybe Saturday you'll see me wearing it. And I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and please like or comment on the video. Once it's uploaded, you can watch it again. Oh, you didn't measure for my hand. Yeah, well, Olivia, we're talking about the penny dress that someone's making, and the penny dress has a circle skirt, and what happens with that is because that circle is a half circle like this, the hem will drop in certain places. Like in the center front, it's going to stay where it was cut, but on the sides, it's going to kind of sag a little. Sag's a bad word. It's going to get stretched out because it's on the bias. And so I was recommending that she hang it up for a few days, get all that bias, drop off of it, and then trim it, and then she can hem it. But yeah, I didn't do anything special with this. I just roll this. I didn't even try this on yet, Olivia. I'm just going to go with how the pattern was. I didn't do any modifications except this little tipping here and adding the little lace trim there. I did do a French seam shoulder. That's the only real French seam you can do on this garment. So yeah, so thanks guys. I hope to see you Saturday. I guess I'm going to surprise you with what I'm sewing since I didn't get really a definitive answer. I'm kind of leaning towards that Archer button up. I feel like it's a really great fall piece, but I'm going to look at my things and see what I have. We can hang out for a while, and yeah, send me your suggestions, and I hope to see you Saturday. Thanks so much, and talk to you later.